St. Matthew's School, I was so looking forward to being with you at your school to be able to present in person, but unfortunately due to COVID-19, we had to improvise just a little bit. But I'm so thankful that we have the technology today that I can come to you from anywhere on the planet, and I am so excited to share with you what I have today. For those of you who don't know, my name is Bray. I'm a full-time speaker and musician from Ontario, Canada. How is your school year going so far? It's probably a lot different than we imagined, right? I mean, there's probably a lot of changes and things that maybe we're not used to, but I think even in the midst of all of these things, that we can live in faith, hope, and love. We can live that in our lives, in our schools, and in our families and communities. And I think we need this all the more. So wherever you are, I want to invite you to join me for the next 30 minutes. I'm going to share some stories with you, I'm going to share some songs, and have the opportunity to pray together. All right, here we go. Let's do it. Every move I make in you. You make me move, Jesus. Every breath I take, I breathe in you. Every step I take in you. You are my way, Jesus. Every breath I take, I breathe in you. Waves of mercy, waves of grace. Everywhere I look, I see your love has captured me. Oh my God, this love, how can it be? Na 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 na. Every move I make in you. You make me move, Jesus. Every breath I take, I breathe in you. Every step I take in you. You are my way, Jesus. Every breath I take, I breathe in you. The waves of mercy, waves of grace. Everywhere I look, I see your face. Your love has captured me. Oh my God, this love, how can it be? Na 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 Let me ask you a question. What is your foundation? I don't know, maybe nobody's ever asked you that before. Maybe we've never really had an opportunity in our lives to really give that some consideration. But the district faith theme this year, it comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 13, verse 13. Faith, hope, and love. And I think we are living in a time right now more than ever that in our lives, we need to live out these virtues in our lives. We need faith, we need hope, and most especially, and we are longing for love. What an incredible year to have this as our theme. When we are grown up and as adults, oftentimes we like to think that as an adult, our foundation is maybe our jobs or our careers, or maybe it's our friends and who we hang out with, or maybe it's how much money we have saved for retirement, or how much money we want to spend on things. And we can lean on all sorts of things as our foundation. And I want to ask that question to you today. What's your foundation? What is it that you are leaning on? See, I went through a lot of my life without having any kind of real foundation, without any kind of foundation that wouldn't just be pushed and swept away when any kind of storms came in. See, I grew up in a family, we were very devout. We went to church every Sunday. We memorized all of the right prayers and the Our Father and the Hail Mary. We went to Mass, and I would be an altar server and involved in music ministry. We did all of the right things. And I knew a little bit of information about God, but see, I didn't really know him in a personal way. I I didn't really have like a friendship with God. See, to me, my faith was just more about like things like homework, like just something that I needed to check off my list, something that I needed to get done and over with. I didn't really rely on Jesus as my foundation. I really didn't have faith. I didn't really have hope or love as my foundation rooted in my life because I didn't really know who God was. And it wasn't until I experienced him in a profound way, in a time of prayer, and in a time in my life when I was really struggling, when I was comparing myself to other people and just longing to be free of the struggles and the burdens that I had. And it wasn't until I leaned on God as my foundation that my life began to change. And not that he took away all of my struggles and all of my burdens. See, I still had all of those things, but I had something very much different than I did before. See, I had a relationship with the same God who created the heavens and the earth and the stars in the sky and the land and the sea. See, I knew the creator of creation, and I knew that he knew me. And when we have that understanding, when that is what our foundation is, when we have faith and we have hope and we have experienced profound love, then that changes everything. See, I relied on all sorts of different things as my source of hope. See, what is hope? Hope is something that we wish for and something that we desire that we have not yet attained, that we haven't gotten yet. That's why we have a hope. We hope that we're going to pass our math test, or we hope that something good might come out of all of this brokenness and sickness and all of these circumstances in life. We have this hope, this desire, something that we wish for. And see, I placed my hope in all of the wrong things. See, I had hoped that if I was good enough at sports, that people would like me. And I had hoped that if I was funny enough, that maybe I'd have enough friends. And I hoped that if I did a good enough job, that people would applaud my efforts. But here's the thing, is that when those things didn't come to be, my hope was shattered. And I had faith in things that would always seem to let me down. I would have put my faith in myself, but when I wasn't able to measure up or when I wasn't able to overcome on my own, my faith would be shattered. I had faith in other people, but they would always seem to disappoint. And so often in my life, I'd seek after what I thought was love, but it would never seem to fulfill. It never seemed to come close to what I was really longing for, what I was really aching for. And that love always seemed to fall short. What is hope? Hope, in the context of our faith, hope is our desire, our wish that we can be with God for all eternity in heaven. That is the hope that we have. And unfortunately, a lot of times I think we get a little bit distracted. We get bogged down with all of the circumstance and all of these rules and regulations and procedures and things, and maybe our focus gets shifted and we lose sight of the hope that we have in Jesus Christ, the hope that we have in God, that we have the hope that we will be with him in heaven for all eternity. And without that hope, man, we are living in despair and we're living in a darkness, and God doesn't want for us to reside in that. See, this one time I was driving and it was just turned to winter and the temperature quickly dropped. It had just rained earlier that day, and as the temperature was falling and I was driving, I was going around this bend on a highway, and I had this little tiny car with little tires. And I remember as I was driving this car, I was being so careful that I would just make small adjustments in the steering wheel. I didn't want to overcompensate and I didn't want to spin out because I knew that it was getting cold. I knew that it was possible that ice could be forming. And as I went around this bend on this highway, I went around too fast. And as I got to the other side, I realized that the bridge on this bend that I was passing by had iced over. And as I got far enough past it, I started to feel that my tires were slipping. And I started to make these little corrections in the steering wheel, and I started to spinning my car around and around and around. And I was terrified, and I saw that there was this transport truck that was coming right up beside me. And all the while I was thinking, like, where is he? Where am I in relation to this truck? Is he going to run into me? And I had the hope that I would be okay. I had the hope that I'd be able to somehow make it out of this car tire spin. And as I went around the bend, somehow I managed to straighten out my car. And I slowed down and I pulled off to the side and I realized, okay, everything's okay. And I kept on driving. But see, without this hope that everything's going to be okay, and without this hope that we have in God, that he has a plan for our lives, then we are living in a despair that God doesn't want for us to have. What is this faith that we talk about? Hebrews chapter 11 verse 1 says that the faith is the assurance of the things hoped for, that we have confidence in. See, we have a faith that the things that we desire and the things that we long for in relation to God, that He is able to accomplish such things. And we have a hope that I'm not going to get into a big accident, but I have no faith whatsoever in my driving ability. That's a bit of a problem. See, we can have all of the hope in the world, but if we don't have the faith that it's possible, then how is it that we're ever going to be able to achieve what we've hoped for? And what is this love? This love of God that we're talking about? Well, I love the passage from 1 John. It says that we love because He first loved us. So if you were to ask 100 people what love means, you'd probably get 100 different answers, but really there's only one, is that we can love because God loved us. And how is it that He loved us? Is that He gave His life for us. I mean, that is the example. That's the bar that was set, and man, that's the love that we're longing for. And it seems like everything else doesn't seem to measure up. But 1 John chapter 3 verse 16 says this, that this is how we know what love is, that Jesus Christ laid down His life for us, and we ought to lay down our lives for our brothers and our sisters. And that's what love is. Love is a full giving of ourself. And when we settle for lesser things, then we're always going to have that longing for something more, until we find the love of God, our Creator, our Father in heaven, and His Son who died for us. Nothing else will ever be able to measure up. The God of the universe that created all things, He knows like how many grains of sand are on the beach and how many hairs are on our head. He knows all of this, and yet He loves us. See, we're not just some insignificant number to Him, but He knew us before we were formed in our mother's womb. He knew us. That's the kind of love that God has for us, and that's the kind of love that we need now more than ever. And see, if we want to see our lives and the world and society transformed today, then we need this kind of love. Not only do we need to just experience it, to have this intellectual understanding that this God is a loving God, but we need to experience it and we need to be transformed by it so that we can share that love with others, with our friends, with those who seem like they maybe are forgotten about, like those in our school community, those in our families, and those in our communities, those who are isolated. They now more than ever need to know and to experience and encounter God's love through you and through me. And see, the way that we demonstrate this love to others is by laying our lives down in the same way that Jesus demonstrated for us. The way that He gave His life for us. That's how He is calling us to love others. The Apostle Paul, he tells us something really important about love in 1 Corinthians chapter 13. He says this, "If I speak with the tongues of men and of angels, but I do not have love, I've become a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. And if I have the gift of prophecy and know all of the mysteries of all knowledge, and if I have all faith as to remove mountains, but I have not love, I am nothing." Love is patient. Love is kind, and it's not jealous. Love does not brag. It's not arrogant. It does not act unbecomingly. It does not seek its own, not to be provoked. It does not take into account the wrong suffered, but rejoices in truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. Love never fails. But if there are gifts of prophecy, then they'll be done away with. And if there are tongues, they will cease. And if there's knowledge, it will be done away with. For we know in part, and we prophesy in part. But now faith, hope, love, abide these three. The greatest of these is love. The greatest of these is love. See, if I have the faith that I can move mountains, but I don't